Hey, welcome to episode 3 of AMC Heroes. I'm John Schnepp, and we are ready to rock this thing. What's going on, guys? We're going to talk about a lot of stuff, a lot of superhero news, a lot of movie news involving superheroes. Here to talk about it with me, we got John Campea. What's up, John?
I am also ready to rock this thing.
Yeah.
So ready.
Also rocking this thing. This week, our special guest is AMC's own Mark Ellis.
Woo!
You know him from Schmoes Know. You also know him from AMC Movie Talk. And you also know him, he's like when he's performing stand-up all around the country. He's also a big nerd. So when I couldn't lock down a sweaty comic book artist or writer, I locked this man to the table because he was here this morning.
That's a nice way of saying, Mark, you were our second choice.
Oh,
no.
Thank you for being here.
He's always our first choice.
I'm a perennial backup in life, and I've accepted my role. I almost worked at a comic book shop one summer. I almost worked at Comic Book Cubicle, but I couldn't make the shifts on time, so I didn't go. But if you're in Williamsburg, Virginia, go to Comic Cubicle. It's a great place of magic.
That sounds kind of slightly frightening. Comic Cubicle? Like... Is it like little tiny
You can
weird?
get trapped in there for days, especially when you're playing in a Magic the Gathering tournament in the back.
Nice and warm. All right, guys. You know, let's lock and load and like do our first one. We're going to talk today about the very big news that just dropped. The Russo brothers are directing Avengers Infinity War 1 and 2. It was just confirmed by everybody on the planet, so now it's definitely happening. Right now, those guys are like in Atlanta shooting Captain America Civil War. Obviously, they did The Winter Soldier and knocked it out of the park. They did an amazing job. We've been hearing about them possibly taking over from Whedon because Whedon was saying, look, I'm done after Age of Ultron. I'm tired. I'm a mental wreck. I can barely walk. I'm not even a functioning human being anymore. This thing is killing me.
Is he an Avenger, or is he just directing the movie?
I believe he is part Vision. He's like part cyborg or something. But he was like, I cannot, continue directing this. This is a monster. Let's get those two guys. So they kind of like, we heard about it for a while. And, the rumors are true. So let's talk about it. John, what do you think about this?
Well, we were talking about this on AMC Movie Talk earlier today. And, my head is going back and forth on it. Because on the one hand, I mentioned this earlier, is you got to be happy. You like all you want as a film plan. We've known for a long time Joss Whedon wasn't going to come back for this. So all we can really hope for and want is that we get a great director. That's all you want. And what do? They are giving us two brothers who gave us, as Mark pointed out earlier, you, me, and Dupree. But they also gave us Captain America Winter Soldier, which they completely crushed and made one of the best comic book movies I've ever seen. I mean, it's just that special movie. They did an incredible job. So I was happy when they said they were coming back to do Civil War, and that's good. But I have also always had this standing thing where, I don't like it for directors for them to stay on one thing for too long. And by the time we get to the end of the second Avengers film that they're going to be doing, there's going to be 4 films in a row that they're doing. And I just always worry about the Sam Raimi-isms, about their staying on one property too long, losing some of their creativity. They get a little bit stagnant. I would like to see them doing other things for their benefit. But, you got to be happy, too, at the same time. These are great directors. They've shown they can handle a Marvel property and kill it and crush it. So on one hand, I'm nervous, but it's an excited kind of nervous. So that's where I'm at.
Mark, what do you think?
I mean, look, you can get any directors that you want for a movie that is this high profile. Whoever you feel like signing on, you can have a meeting with them and they'll probably want to take it because it's such a money-making endeavor and it's such a great way to artistically put superheroes on the screen, right? Now, with this, I think that you can't really say if it's a great decision yet. You just can't until we see Captain America Civil War. It's a great concept. What they did with Captain America Winter Soldier certainly shows a lot of potential for them to be able to have these superhero films. But I think that, and I made this point on AMC Movie Talk too, I think that like in front of the camera, you have the Avengers and they're all teaming up for one common goal. That's the way it's going to be behind the scenes with these films too. That there's a lot of people, there's a lot of voices, and everybody's going to have their say. It's going to be one giant collaboration. Hopefully it's going to be a great one with those two guys being in the Captain America and Iron Man roles. Not Civil War, but we're both the leaders of this ship. We have final say, but there's going to be a lot of voices and a lot of opinions in the room. So I think that they're not going to be going into this thing alone, but they're going to be the final ones.
Yeah, and also remember, Feige has enough faith in them, that after the Winter Soldier, even before they began shooting Civil War, they were talking about having these guys take over their biggest franchise, the Avengers, the biggest moneymaker that they've got right now. So the you know, that's a really big, you know, passing of the torch, so to speak. So I think the confidence that Marvel proper has
huge
in the Russo brothers is giant. So that speaks, you know, vast words for me that, hey, look, you know, they're about to pop off Civil War. I think they were like, look, you guys handled Winter Soldier so well, and everyone loved you on set. Probably all the actors are like, no, get those guys. So I just think it's sort of, remember, they're also going to be shooting Infinity War back to back. So it's like they're shooting 1 and 2 all at the same time. So in essence, it's one big third movie. You know, sort of like that's the way to think about it. It's like, yeah, it isn't. I don't think they're going to be suffering from the fatigue of, oh, now we're making a 4th film. I think they'll be enjoying the insanity of making one giant movie that's just split into 2 parts. So
it's such a natural progression too, because you see what they did with Winter Soldier, where you had 2 Avengers were main characters in that film. Then you also had Nick Fury in there. Then with Civil War, there's going to be more characters coming in. That we're going to be introducing Spider-Man and Black Panther, and maybe Hawkeye shows up, maybe somebody else shows up, and then Infinity War, you get everybody and Aunt May probably is going to be in that film.
It's going to be the kitchen sink, and I personally hope it is. I hope they do chuck in like little cameos of everybody. If it's going to go cosmic, let's see Moondragon and some other weirdo characters that I don't think would ever get a spotlight ever, but they could be floating in the background or get a like, go get them or something, you know? It'd be fun.
I mean, one of the things that does make me excited about this, though, and this is a little bit of, I didn't realize I had this favoritism. I did not think, you know, kind of in the way in the X-Men movies, we never liked the way they kind of handled Cyclops, right? I wasn't thrilled with the way they handled Captain America in the first Avengers film, because to me, Captain America is Captain America. He's the leader. He's whatever, and I'm hoping a little bit that the Russo brothers will show just a little bit of favoritism. They probably won't, but I'm hoping they'll show a little bit of favoritism towards Captain America going into the new Avengers movies, having now shepherded 2 Captain America films. I'm hoping they give Cap a little bit more of his due.
And you're going to see a lot of that in the way that Civil War plays out, but also just from a fan perspective, do you guys see any other way that after Civil War is released, fans either loving the concept of the Russo brothers directing Infinity War or them hating it? I mean, is there going to be any middle ground? Because this is such a Civil War is such a high profile project that you can't really afford to make this a good movie. Right?
It's got to be great.
It's got to be great. Yeah. Or if it's bad and people don't like it, they're going to be screaming for the Russo brothers' heads, and they're going to be saying, you got to get them off this project, right?
Yeah, this could backfire. I mean, you're right. Let's say look, it's not going to happen, but let's say Civil War is bad.
I think it's going to be great, too.
Yeah, so do I. But let's say Civil War is bad, okay? If Civil War is bad, then you're right. They've just painted themselves into a corner, and it's going to backfire on them big time. I'll disagree with you, though, that I think if Civil War is good, I think if it's good, I think that'll disappoint a bunch of people, but I also don't think they're going to be running to jump off the Titanic at that point. I think if it's good, I think they'll go, okay, let's see what they do with Avengers, right? If it's great, which I think it will be, if Winter Soldier is any indication, then everybody's going to be losing their minds. If it's good, I think they'll all hang in there. But you're right, man. If it's bad, then Marvel's got a problem, because people are going to jump off that ship.
That's so hard to even fathom that it would be, because I mean the idea of Civil War with those actors, Robert Downey Jr. versus Chris Evans, with those 2 iconic characters, just that alone, it was just them in the movie and no one else. It wasn't Avengers 2.5. It was just those 2, you know, basically fighting against each other. That would be a movie that would be, I think, great.
It's such a high bar to set anyway. I mean, it's like if you have a great band and you get them in a room together and they start jamming, something good is going to come out of it. It may not be the greatest album they've ever done, but it's going to be a really good product. And it's so interesting to me to see how this mirrors what's going on in the Star Wars universe right now, because they had JJ, then they have JJ back for episode 9, and it's like, well, we hope the first movie he directs is really good so that this next one people can get excited about.
Well, this is, like you mentioned, the Russos might just start to favor Iron Man after they work with him on Captain America Civil War. They might be like, now we're actually favoring Tony Stark. We're going to give him a little more flavor in the Infinity Wars.
I hope not. He's got a lot of flavor. He's great. But, you know, bringing up the question, you're getting a great band in the room together. They're going to make great music. Oh, yeah, what if they just start playing Nickelback covers? Like, and that's
when you jump off the cliff.
What if we got this great Marvel band together and they start doing their movie version of Nickelback covers?
All right, America,
people are going to be
look at this photograph.
Speaking of Nickelback, let's move on. So here we go, launching into the next topic, which isn't about Nickelback. It's about Wonder Woman. So Wonder Woman is going to be appearing in
Look at that photograph. Sorry, I was
this
Every
brand
time it
new-
makes me laugh.
this brand new adaptation called Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice. So Wonder Woman's going to be in this movie. They're going to introduce this character, and then she's going to launch off and do her own film. Gal Gadot is playing Wonder Woman. It was controversial when she was first picked as Wonder Woman. And a lot of people went off on her, not just because of her cup size, but that was actually a big bone of contention. People were like, her boobs aren't big enough.
Yeah.
You know, and they said she's too frail, that she's not a good actress. A lot of people, John Campea has been very vocal about it, but you know, where's the proof of her being a good actress? We don't really have too much of it. She's an Israeli actress. She did a few lines here and there in Fast and Furious. But, you know, this new article just came out where she basically talks about all this reaction to her casting as Wonder Woman and also her feelings about the character of Wonder Woman and her being cast as Wonder Woman. And I thought it was insightful to hear about the actress and what she had to say about all the stuff that we've been talking about for the last year since she was cast. I thought, what did you guys do? You guys all read the article that where she basically said, if you didn't read the article, she basically said, look, I know, you know, they were like, well, what did you think about fans? What, talking about my boobs? Yeah, no, I know thought I was a frail person. I got into the gym. You know, I worked out. They talked about Wonder Woman's powers, how she doesn't fly, she can jump, she's super strong. And then she talked literally about what Wonder Woman means to her and to the rest of the world. And I thought that's where I was like, wow, that she actually thinks this way is a good indication for the way that Wonder Woman's going to be portrayed. She was like, I've always liked playing strong female characters and people could think for themselves. And Wonder Woman to me is like the epitome of the strongest woman on the planet. So she's basically bringing that kind of essence to her. And when she did her acting tryouts were against Ben Affleck, and that's what got her the role. So to me, that's another thing that was like, hey, if Ben Affleck was like, look, she can act, she's great, I feel confident acting with her. That was something. Another thing to me was like, all right, it's another confidence builder. What do you guys think, John?
Well, I mean, look, I remember when they announced Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, one of the comments I made was, hey, you know, man, I don't want a 105-pound Wonder Woman. But the reality is, I mean, you can put any actor or actress in the gym, give them a few gallons of horse steroids and say, go for it, give them the right trainer, and they can bulk up. I mean, and that's fine. The whole issue with the boobs thing, this is one thing I never understood. I never understood the fanboys who get online complain about her boob size. Look, I get it. If they were making a biopic about Dolly Parton, who, you know, look, in all seriousness, her breast size is, in pop culture terms, that's kind of an identifying factor of Dolly Parton. Then it's an issue. Wonder Woman doesn't have magical boobs. Her boobs are irrelevant. That means nothing about the character. Some artists draw are a little more hefty. Some artists draw are not. It doesn't matter. So I've never understood that complaint whatsoever. My one complaint has always been that the little we have seen her act, she's been terrible. I mean, like, there's no way to soft-foot it around. Her lines have always come off as incredibly wooden and all that kind of stuff. And I would have people say to me, well, John, she must have showed them something because they gave her the role. You can say that about every terrible actor who ever got a role in any movie. They must have showed them something because they gave them the role. But here's the thing, too. With all these people who've been critical about her casting, none have been more critical than me. I'll stand on it. I think it was a mistake to cast her. But that being said, a lot of people who still want to bandwagon about the fact that it was a mistake to cast her want me to be like their cheerleader. It's like, I'm sorry, guys, that's 6 months behind me now. Now, as a guy who's just dying for Batman versus Superman to be great, all I've got, she's Wonder Woman. So now all that's left is to get on board with it and start cheering her on. Like, don't cheer against her. If you want a good movie, don't cheer against her. Cheer for her. Cheer for the people who are handling her. And so when I read an interview like this, and I like how she addressed the whole stupid, misogynistic, sexist comments that get thrown at her. And I see her addressing what Wonder Woman means to her. That is all good stuff. None of it makes her a better actress, granted. But look, if they can make Dave Bautista, I come back to this all the time now. If they can make Dave Bautista, who in his own admission says he's not a very good actor, and if they can work him in such a way to accentuate his strengths and downplay his weaknesses and make him come across as an awesome Drax the Destroyer, then let's trust a director like Zack Snyder. Let's trust that and hope that they can find a way to say, let's find her strengths and let's accentuate the strengths and let's hide and cover up the weaknesses. If they can do it with Drax the Destroyer, why can't they do it with Wonder Woman? So Did I like the casting? Everybody knows I didn't, but I think there's reason to be hopeful, and I'm just telling everybody who's a fan of comic book movies, get on board with it. It's happening. Whether we liked it or not 6 months ago or a year ago, doesn't matter. She's Wonder Woman. Let's start cheering her on. And I think this was a really good interview.
Right on.
Yeah, this wasn't a presidential election where, I voted for somebody and they didn't win, so now I'm just going to be crying about politics for the next 4 years. This is who you're stuck with now, whether you like it or not. I, after reading this article, have a lot of faith in Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman because she wasn't cast in the way that most other people get cast in films. She had to go against Ben Affleck in a room. So they had to recognize that talent. There's something there, okay? So when you talk about the Fast Six that she was in, it's not the best example of acting for any of those thespians that are in that film. So I'm not gonna be so hesitant for her to play Wonder Woman just because of that. The boobs thing, I think all boobs are magical. I don't care how big or small they are. She listens to Beyonce before to get into character. I mean, that's the perfect way. Everything that she said in this article, she seems to grasp the character. And when you grasp the character that you're playing, that's so much more important than how you physically resemble them from 10 or 20 or 50 years ago. My example would be Daniel Craig as James Bond. When Daniel Craig was cast as James Bond and nobody saw him act as James Bond yet, you just looked at him and he didn't resemble what we all thought of as James Bond. He wasn't the classic clean-cut looking British dude.
He had blonde hair.
He was he was rough and tough. He looked like he came from the streets. Yeah. And then you saw him as James Bond and you're like, not only is that dude James Bond, he's a new James Bond, he's a kick-ass James Bond. That's a James Bond that we want going forward.
Right. Yeah, he became our James Bond after Casino Royale. Really, when somebody inhabits the role, they make you forget about all the other previous incarnations of that said role. And I think what we have in our psyche is Linda Carter from Wonder Woman, from the TV show Wonder Woman, and she had a big bust. So that's kind of like when people think of Wonder Woman, they think of that character less so than even the comic books. So comic books are a very smaller majority of people. Many more people have seen the Wonder Woman TV show. So they think of that as, spinning around magically, and maybe they'll work that in, like her transformation, like laser powers, weird. I'm wearing my normal outfit, and I'm sure they won't. That won't be part of it. But yeah, so
so something like this.
That's right.
John Campion's boobs aren't big enough to be playing Wonder Woman.
He's fired. I don't think that they're going to do that spinning thing, and I certainly
don't think so either.
I bet you they make fun of it. I bet you they have some fun with it.
That would be cool if they did.
That would be cool.
Yeah, I think it'd be a nice nod to the fans, and then you just kind of turns on its ear a little bit.
Maybe she just shows like she's in an outfit, and then she walks around and it comes out, and she's in this Amazonian outfit, and they're like, "What? How did you?" Yeah, let's not
talk about it.
Let's move on to the next thing. We're going to talk. We mentioned the Avengers. And now let's talk about the thing that was blew everyone away last week was this Avengers trailer that just showed up with all new footage. There was this a minute long.
Yeah.
And it was sort of like, all right, we saw the Avengers trailer 3 and that was great. This new trailer that they just let loose on all formats, it's just, to me it was like a blockbuster, just really highlighted every single character from the Avengers, that who they are, what they're going to be doing in this movie without giving too much away. And it showed a lot more action sequences. Just we've seen piecemeal pieces of the whole thing. I still think, the way they do trailers now, especially with Avengers, they're not showing everything. They're showing here's this one little set piece. Here's this other little set piece. The next trailer, you see a little bit more of it. The next trailer, you see a little bit more of it. And in this one, I think you see the beginning and the end of one of those set pieces. So it's it's a really smart way to hey, look, we're going to show you this. You're going to get really excited to see this film, but you haven't seen anything yet. What are you guys' opinions on this?
It was such a shock when I saw it, I couldn't even process it. I'm a huge college basketball fan, so I was working in Ohio this weekend, so I go to a bar at noon, I'm ready to watch March Madness, and the first commercial break has this new Avengers footage, and I'm seeing it, and I'm like, that's the only team that could beat Kentucky in this tournament, is the Avengers. And then you get a little bit more into the personalities of how these guys are going to interact. I loved Iron Man, Tony Stark's line when he says that I make this cool, or whatever he said.
Right, I get to pay.
No, I'm not in charge. He's the boss. I just design everything, make everything, make us look cool.
Yeah, and it did plant a little bit of a Civil War seed, but I don't want to go that far yet. It was just so exciting to see footage in a way that didn't make me feel like, oh, you guys are giving away too much of the plot, or now I know too much of the story, or hey, wait, what was that? This one, it just seemed it was another fun preview that we got that didn't make me say, oh, I wish I didn't see that before I go into the movies, which is rare. When you see it for the third time, you see a teaser, you see a real trailer. By that point, I'm like, I don't want to know anything else. I don't want to see anything else. This had new footage that didn't make me feel that. So that's an accomplishment.
it to me was the best of the Avengers trailers. It was only 1 minute long, but I thought easily the best of the one. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the whole Pinocchio song, No Strings on Me. That was all really cool. But you've heard me say this a few times already. What lacked for me in the first two Avengers trailers was the identity of the Avengers. It didn't feel like an Avengers. It felt like a really cool, dark, hard, gritty thing, but it didn't feel like Avengers to me because, and then I put my finger on it, it didn't feel like it was fun. There was no fun. And you can have dark and gritty and fun at the same time. That's something that they do really well in the Marvel Universe. This one felt fun. I mean, without taking away from the sense of desperation that the situation is dire. And yet they still found a way to get the fun. But for me, the money shot out of all the trailers was in this one. And that's the shot. I already tipped my hand a little bit about being biased for Captain America. But Captain America, that shot, shooting down on his motorcycle, flipping himself over the bars, then picking up the motorcycle in one motion and I lost my freaking mind.
Yeah.
Because I remember because Maude was here, right? And she was like out in here and I'm back in my office watching that. And like they could hear me going, yeah, and they could hear me screaming about it like from there. I was like, are you kidding me? That to me was the money shot. So excited. It was an awesome 1 minute trailer.
Yeah. I can't wait to see the film. Comes out in less than a month or in a month now, right?
But what this thing did too is that it showed a lot of people who are just now remembering, oh yeah, there's an Age of Ultron coming out. They're not all as sweaty as we are. Some people are just watching college basketball and they're huge sports fans, and then they see this is their first look at Age of Ultron. They're like, oh my God, this looks awesome.
Yeah.
They showed all the characters. They did a great job. It was almost like they're playing a fighting game, and you got to meet every character before you choose which one you want to battle with.
Thor's in it, also the Hulk, and then you get the first line of Pietro where you actually hear he has a Russian accent, which I thought was cool.
Yeah, so it had more of a broad appeal maybe especially than that first Pinocchio trailer did, but it did nothing less to enthuse people who are already familiar with this as a film. So,
and you know what I said, somebody had asked me before, and I think I might have said this on the show. I said that I don't think Age of Ultron will make as much as the first Avengers did opening weekend. Because remember, the opening weekend of Avengers, it broke every record. It was so, north of 200 million. That is something that can't happen again. And I said, well, it'll make a ton of money, won't make quite as much as Avengers did. I take it back. This trailer playing during March Madness and all that kind of stuff, I take it back. I'm now starting to, I think you guys have convinced me that it probably will actually make more than the first one.
It's going to crack that 200 million mark. That's
again,
for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, let's all hope it's an amazing film. So.
For a movie to do that, it's got to be a movie that all of us pay to see multiple times. It's not just, I'm going to see it, oh, thank God I got to see that opening weekend. You want to go see it again and again and again within that 3-day span. It could be that movie.
Watch It Sucks. Oh my God.
That would be horrible.
We come out.
At least we've got Transformers 4. So moving on, we've got a brand new topic this week that we're going to be revisiting from now on for the rest of however long we do this show, which is forever. It's called Infinity. It's called Superhero Flashback, where we're going to take a movie that happened maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, maybe 3 years ago. We're going to bring it up and examine it. This week, it's going to be 1989's Batman. So 1989's Batman was the film that reintroduced the entire world to Batman. Previously, he was known as the funny, campy Adam West Batman from the 60s television shows. That's what the rest of the globe knew Batman as. Tim Burton had a much darker take on the Caped Crusader. He was cast as Michael Keaton, who was up to that point kind of like a funny man. He was in Beetlejuice, Night Shift.
Mr.
A lot of people,
Mom.
Mr. Mom. A lot of people were like, "What? I don't even understand. How can you cast Michael Keaton as Batman? It's going to be ruined." They got Jack Nicholson as the Joker, which no one argued about. Everyone was like, "That's a perfect casting. Jack Nicholson is the Joker." They even named him Jack in the movie. So this is produced by John Peters and Peter Guber. They were at that time like kind of a powerhouse producing team. Everywhere you went that summer, you saw Batman logos on subways, on buses. People were like shaving it into their heads. It became Batmania. Then the movie came out and people were like, wow, this film is actually crazy good. It's fun. It's like a darker take on Batman. It didn't have that corny humor that, beloved as it is from the 60s shows. Batman was totally changed by Frank Miller in The Dark Knight, this comic book series that kind of helped change comic books as a whole. Him and Alan Moore coming out with Watchmen in that same year, it just blew everyone away who was reading comics and elevated comics to a brand new kind of art form that hadn't been there and now is still in. So let's talk about Batman. Where were you guys when you saw Batman?
Oh my God. I still remember exactly where I was when I saw Batman for the first time. I was living in my hometown of Hamilton, Ontario, Canada. Young guy, kid, but I went to Jackson Square. For those of you who are in the Hamilton, Toronto area, I went to Jackson Square, and I remember it was the first time I had ever gone to a movie where the lineup went through, because it was one of those theaters that was inside the mall, right? Mm-hmm. The line went through the entire mall. I'd never seen this before, and then out the door, out into the streets. I had never seen that before, and that was the first time I saw it. And you're right. You can't talk about this movie in hindsight without also bringing up that Miller comic, without talking about The Dark Knight Returns. The Dark Knight Returns changed our perception, first of all, of comics as a whole, you're right, but of Batman. It totally changed, and you can see the influence of that in the Burton film. And Burton hits us over the head with, this is a different Batman than your parents remember, kids. He hits us over the head with it right in that near beginning of the scene where he's got that thug on the roof. He goes, I want you to tell your friends about me. Who are you? I'm Batman. And that it changed. That was the signal flare in the sky. This is a different Batman. It was a more brutal show. Nicholson's Joker, there were elements certainly of Cesar Romero's Joker in there, absolutely, especially very flamboyant, whatever. Sure. But he was murdering people and killing people. It really did set the mark. It was the announcement that comic book movies can work. They died a few iterations later, but it said to us and said to the world of Hollywood that comic book movies can work, and they're great. And I'm forgetting Alec Baldwin's ex-wife's name.
Kim Basinger.
Kim Basinger. Mm-hmm. At the time, she was she still is. She's one of the hottest women on the planet. She had great chemistry with Michael Keaton in that. And you're right. Who the hell thought that Michael Keaton, this 5'8", skinny little guy, would be Batman? And to this day, there's a lot of people that, for them, Michael Keaton is Batman. And it's just classic, absolute classic.
It was tonal perfection, I think, because it nailed the comic book format and still being dark, but it had a light levity to it that didn't make it cheesy or campy. And that's a kind of a parallel with Michael Keaton's casting, because he came from a very comedic background. And so you had that element of it, but he could be really dark and brooding. He proved it in movies like Clean and Sober, which nobody saw. Everybody saw Beetlejuice, so they weren't sure this could happen. I was a 7 or 8 year old kid going to the mall, to Patrick Henry Mall in Newport News, Virginia, to see it at an AMC theater, and that's when I first learned that AMC theater has the best nachos that you would ever want to get. So Fat Ellis is in there eating a bunch of nachos. Can't wait to see Michael Keaton play Batman. My mom was really excited. She took all 3 kids to go see the film because she wanted to see Jack Nicholson as the Joker. At that point in my life, I had no idea who Jack Nicholson was. I just knew that Beetlejuice was going to be in the movie and that Batman was in it, so I was already excited. The opening shot of this film just sets the tone so perfect, because it's going through all the, you're like, what is this? This weird, twisty, kind of concrete looking, is this Gotham City? It's the Batman symbol, and it's to Danny Elfman's score, which to this day is one of my favorite film scores of all time. That set against the Joker's themes, which was Prince music. Yep. Prince was all over the radio, 1989 to 1990, and you're right, the merchandising that hadn't happened in a film like that probably since Star Wars, where you had kids going to school and they had the Batman Converse, they had Joker jackets. That movie just simply, it was one of those films that just descended upon the earth and did not let go for a long time.
Yeah, I think that was Danny Elfman's first film score, I'm pretty sure. I mean, it's like
I didn't know that.
He was
really?
from Oingo
Well, he
Boingo.
did Beetlejuice too.
Oh, he did Beetlejuice.
Yeah.
So, all right, I stand corrected.
Yeah.
But he was from Oingo Boingo, but that Tim Burton really started getting him involved in film scores. So Batman, he knocked it out of the park.
And I think Robert Wool should get a shout out too, because Robert Wool had it wasn't so many times in comic book movies now you see a sidekick or the sense of humor guy has to be a little too over the top, and you're like, oh, just stop cracking jokes. Right. I thought he worked in that film really well.
He bugged me a little bit, but I could see he wasn't as bad as like a Schneider
of the
or
Wicker
somebody.
People.
Yeah,
the
I know.
Wicker People.
But,
I thought he was really good in it.
But he was always making little faces and stuff. Kind of bugged me. I wanted the Joker to kill him, but still.
I wanted the Joker to kill
All right,
him.
so yeah, Batman to me, I saw it in for the very first year of college. I was a big sweaty nerd. I already read Dark Knight. I was like, it's going to be so dark and awesome, and I loved it. I saw it. I thought the Prince music kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. Then Robert Wool, but overall, I really love that film, and I love Batman Returns as well. I really like that take, this kind of like dark fantasy, it's just a really cool take on the Batman. So up until Nolan took over, there was no other comparison. And you're right. I mean, you got to go back in time when you think about these things. All we had as a superhero movie at that time was Superman. That's it. There were not people, you would talk about a superhero film, people would laugh at you. They'd be like, what are you talking about? A Spider-Man movie? Get out of here. You would get kicked out of a meeting if you brought up superhero movies. Because Superman 4 failed so horribly in 1987.
Who doesn't love Quest for Peace?
Yeah, the first subtitled Superman film. Such an abomination that, it just pretty much crushed everything. It was like a
The
Batman
Richard
and
Pryor
Robin.
one wasn't much better.
Yeah, but hey, compared to Superman 4, it was an
that's
Oscar
true.
winner.
That's
It was like
true.
it really kind of went down quickly. So there was at that time period, 1989, there was like, no, we were not, we're still suffering from 2 years ago, Superman Quest for Peace. So that kind of put superhero films back on the table, and at least people started thinking about them more. Like, well, maybe we'll try doing the X-Men in 10 years. It still took a long time. Blade, it took a really long time to get that going. But, I could also blame Batman and Robin for destroying it again. So,
it did.
It really, we had a little bit of flavor going on in the 90s, which we're obviously going to talk about all these different superhero films. But moving on to current 2015 news, Harley Quinn's wardrobe. So Margot Robbie is going to have plenty of different costume changes in the Suicide Squad movie, much to all the fans' delight. So word is she's going to have her original Harley Quinn outfit. She's going to get into that nurse outfit. She's going to be from the Batman animated outfit. There's going to be a lot of costume changes for this Harley Quinn character. I've even heard online that she's going to have her hyenas. So let's talk about Harley Quinn and all the different amazing outfits that we're going to see Margot Robbie displaying.
I mean, yeah, she actually came to prominence in Batman the Animated Series
Yes.
in that classic outfit,
Yes.
and then
Mr. J.
and then she had the nurse outfit is the one that I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see that. But apparently, she's also there's some scene she goes to a bar that's upcoming where she has something totally different that we haven't seen before, or maybe as an amalgam of all the things that we've seen. I mean, look, you have the freedom now in comic book films to take the source material and update it. Now that's going to be easier with the costumes than it is with the hyenas. I don't know how you get the hyenas in there, but I'm excited to find out.
They have a walk-on, like she's in her apartment. Okay, here you go, babies. Like feeds them. Maybe that's it.
That might be it.
Look, one of the things about Harley Quinn that stands out to her about the character is the loudness of her outfits. Whether it's that classic card Joker outfit that's head to toe with the bells coming out, or whether it's some of the more sultry, sexy stuff that's come around later. You go to any cosplay event, Comic-Con, WonderCon, whatever, you are always going to bump into 20 or 40 or 300 girls dressed as Harley
And
Quinn.
you're almost going to get beheaded by those giant hammers that they have. The
big
hammers
mallets.
get bigger and bigger. The mallet, someone was like, I had a comment on something like the last Comic-Con. I was like, hey, look out with the mallet, because I almost got smashed in the face with it. It was like this big.
Now, I'll be honest. I'm going to say something that's really unpopular. I don't want to see her in the traditional Harley Quinn outfit. I don't want to see her head to toe with the bells coming out. I don't think that fits this new Man of Steel universe that they set up. I just don't think it fits. But that doesn't mean I don't want to see these loud outfits. I think if you're going to do Harley Quinn, you got to put her through a series of outfits. Make them loud, make them sexy. Some don't have to be sexy either. But I think they're going to avoid the cartoonish look of them, because that's just not the world that Zack Snyder set up with Man of Steel.
It's not, but it's going to be interesting to see how she plays off the way that you have the new Joker now. I mean, because that it was what Heath Ledger was able to do with the Joker was totally different from what Nicholson did with the Joker. And Harley Quinn, so much of what she does is based on. I mean, she's a big fan of the Joker. So to see what they do with the new Joker is going to have a huge influence on her. Now, if the Joker wasn't a supervillain, do you think he just runs 100 miles in the other direction from somebody like Harley Quinn? Because it's like this chick is way too big of a fan of mine.
Well, she was actually introduced in the animated series. That's where she was created.
That's where she came from. Yeah.
She came from that. She's not from the comic books. And I think, the playfulness of her character from the animated series has carried over into all the different incarnations. Every time you hear her say, "What do you think, Puddin'?" That's from the animated series. And I'm positive that they're going to have that in Suicide Squad. That's her character. That's how she talks. And that's her interaction with the Joker. So if they are going to use that, the original jestery kind of Harley Quinn outfit, I could almost see that as like she has to put that on to break him out. Who knows how they're going to introduce her character as Harley Quinn in the Suicide Squad movie? Who knows? So, however, I look forward to at least 40 different costume changes.
And you talk about Margot Robbie playing that character, and Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman. There's not a lot of let's go see her other movies and see if she's going to be any good. Margot Robbie, I mean,
She's great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, does anybody have any doubt she's going to knock this out of the park?
No, because even
nothing.
in Focus, she was good. And Focus isn't a great movie, but she was really solid in it.
Yeah.
And of course, her work in Wolf of Wall Street. No, there's no doubt.
And that
about
accent
her.
in Wolf of Wall Street too. So
Yeah. No, you're right. I mean, there's no doubt. There is no doubt about her as Harley Quinn.
Let's move on. We've got this one is casting unknowns versus casting movie stars. So you have superstars versus total unknowns. You have Johnny Depp versus Philip McGribbons. You have Emily Blunt versus Paula Chimpletsky. Of course, you've never heard of Paula Chimpletsky. You don't know who she is. She's an unknown. You know who Emily Blunt is because she's been in everything. So who's better to cast for a superhero film? Like you had Christopher Reeve in Superman. No one knew who he was. He was like in a soap opera or something. And then he exploded in Superman. He had a bunch of friends with him, Marlon Brando, Gene Hackman, super well-known actors to help elevate it's not, they've got these name actors in there, and it helps if you do that kind of thing. What do you guys think about this?
I think it doesn't ultimately, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. Look, there's still this thing where we understand that as far as box office draw goes, we've learned more and more that the era has just changed. A big star doesn't guarantee box office. But what a star name does, what a lot of movies still want to do, is make sure there is a star name in there. Why? Because now it's not about box office, it's about giving your movie credibility. So like even George Lucas making Star Wars, okay, it's all these unknowns. Got to have somebody that the studio can get behind and that people will recognize. Hey, how about that guy from Bridge Over the River Kwai, Alec Guinness? Let's throw him in there. Okay, even the Harry Potter thing, which you'd think, well, it's just a bunch of kids. They don't need to have anybody. But what they do with the adults, they get Alan Rickman, they get Maggie Smith, they get all these names that gives that when the parents who are going to take these kids to see that, they see it on the poster and think, okay, now it has credibility to them. So when talking about these superhero roles, you don't need stars. You're going to have stars somewhere in the movie. But let's look, here's a great example. Ray Fisher, the kid who is about to play Cyborg in this new DC cinematic universe, right? Nobody has ever heard of them. But hearing about somebody is completely irrelevant. Look at the kid's resume. This kid's done Broadway. He's done stage renditions of what's the one? I'm forgetting the name of it now. I can't believe it. The most classic of all, where Atticus Fitch is like
Okay.
To Kill a Mockingbird?
To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah.
He did stage for the Kill a Mockingbird. He played Fetch Clay. He played Muhammad Ali on stage. He's played in all these classes. He's played in Macbeth. This is a dude who can act. This is a dude who has lived and breathed the art of acting. He is a thespian. So the question is not, is he popular? The question is, does he have talent? So you can bring a no-name like a Ray Fisher in, and you'll get guys like me that will freak out about it because you know they went into the right well to get out a super talented dude. Now, whenever they do a Cyborg movie, you know they're going to have some name in there around him. But as far as the lead themselves, do they fit it? Ryan Reynolds is a big name, but we talked about this, right? Ryan Reynolds is a great Deadpool, great match. So it's no problem that he's a big star. I think Ray Fisher is going to be a great Cyborg. He's an unknown. So it's really all about, is it a great fit? I will take a great fitting unknown over a non-fitting huge star any day.
Well, before we move on to Mark. You brought up a good point with Ryan Reynolds. He was a bad fit for Green Lantern.
Yeah.
It's like he comes from comedy, and the idea of Green Lantern was never a comedic dude who was like, hey, I got this ring, sort of. So it just kind of didn't mesh really too well. I don't think, we've talked about this, I don't think Ryan Reynolds was the fault of Green Lantern. I think he did an okay job, but he just didn't, for Deadpool, he's a perfect fit.
Yeah.
Green Lantern just seemed weird to me. How about you, Mark?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's less casting somebody that's hugely famous and more somebody who's able to disappear into whatever role they are, like Alec Guinness could, or like Patrick Stewart could in the X-Men, because he was arguably the biggest name in the first X-Men film.
Yeah.
I didn't know who Hugh Jackman
and Halle
was.
Berry, yeah.
Yeah, and Halle Berry, yeah. And I had no idea who Hugh Jackman was.
But Hugh Jackman was an unknown.
But he was an unknown, but he was also like what John's talking about is that he's somebody who had classical training.
Yep.
So he had acting chops. Like, it doesn't matter how
A
famous
lot
they
of
are.
stage experience,
If
too.
they can pull off the dialogue and they can pull off the physicality required for that role. As far as me personally, I get turned on by stars. When I heard Will Smith was going to be in Suicide Squad, I was like, oh, that's awesome. That's really, really cool. Because now it's like, it lends credibility to the project. It's like, well, if they sold this famous guy who doesn't need to ever work another day in his life on being in this, then maybe that's something. So I think that it's harder for unknowns to disappear back into a different role after they're done with that than it would be like Michael Keaton played Batman. We already knew who he was before he played Batman. We can see him in other roles after that. It's harder for somebody who leapt to fame as a superhero initially. I always saw Christopher Reeve as Superman first.
Right.
Not that he wasn't a great actor, a trained thespian. I always saw him as Superman first because that's how the world, for the most part, met that guy.
Right. A lot of people who jump into those roles have those fears. Like I know Henry Cavill sort of had a little bit of that, but then he just embraced it. After a little bit, you're like, you know what? I'm all in. And it shows when you're all in. It's like it's a good way to think about it because if you're all in, then you're always going to have these other choices to make. I think Christopher Reeve, after a while, he was like, I'm getting that Superman curse of can't break out of it. Then he started breaking out of it, and then unfortunately had that accident. But he was a great actor. So, but a lot of people had him burned in as Superman.
Yeah, but I think it's going to be easier for Ben Affleck to get over playing Batman whenever he does than it will be for Henry Cavill to get over playing Superman. Now, again, you can make better choices because Christopher Reeve kept being in Superman movies, like we said, that got progressively worse. So I think that maybe you sit back and you look at your career and you can see the mistakes that other people made before you. And you're like, maybe I won't make 4 bad movies in a row, or I won't do this kind of choice after I play a superhero. So you can learn from history now in a way that maybe you couldn't have before because we have this template of superhero movies for the last 30 years that Christopher Reeve and Michael Keaton didn't have.
Now, speaking of Christopher Reeve, I always got to bring this up whenever Christopher Reeves come up. One of the greatest comedies of all time, Noises Off. Him and John Ritter play off each other with Carol Burnett. And it is always switching spots number 1 and number 2 with 40-Year-Old Virgin for me as I think the greatest comedy ever done. If you haven't seen Noises Off, Christopher Reeve, Carol Burnett, John Ritter, the dude from from Cousins on TV or whatever. It's great. Check out Christopher Reeve in that.
And if you have to make it about superheroes, you could say John Ritter was in Hero at Large, which is a very obscure. He played a superhero in that. So you have Superman and the Scrimbles, whatever his name was. Let's move on. Deadpool. Expanding cast. So we've got Deadpool starting its principal photography. I think it was last week or this week, somewhere around there.
This week, yeah.
Yeah, we got Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. We're all happy about that. Now we start hearing about the cast. The rest of the cast is getting revealed. We've got T.J. Miller as Weasel. We've got Monica Baccarin as Copycat. So let's talk about that. What do you think about Monica? She's the most recent casting.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Campy kind of won me over when we were talking about the other big name that's going to be associated with this project is what's her face, the UFC fighter, Gina Carano.
Oh, Gina Carano, right?
Yeah,
oh, right
as
on,
Angel
right,
does.
right,
but
right.
But then it's like, well, she doesn't have a lot to do. Copycat's going to have a lot more to do. And then you look at this person's resume. Again, I didn't know who she was, but she's a part of Firefly, okay? She was in Serenity, so she has that nerd credibility. Think Stargate SG-1, too. So her coming to a project like this, it's not foreign territory.
She was in V.
She was in
the
V.
leader of V, that head that showed up on all the spaceships.
And she's in Gotham right now. So she brings a lot of that geek cred you're talking about.
Yeah, and so I think that Copycat is somebody that has it's a very complex role because it requires you to do a lot of things. I mean, she can take somebody. It's not quite a shape-shifting situation, but there's going to be a lot of things to stretch with her. I hope she can pull it off, and I think that with his resume, she'll be able to do it.
Yeah, I really liked. I mean, we've known for a little while that Baccarin was going to be in it, which I was always excited about. I mean, look, from a pure guy point of view, she's one of the hottest women in town.
Not bad to look at.
Yeah, no, she's incredibly beautiful, and she carries herself with elegance and grace at the same time. She's fantastic. And I really loved hearing that she was going to play Copycat because it does a couple things for the movie. One, it provides a cool potential romantic interest for Deadpool because they have a romantic past in the comic books at any rate. But she is a bona fide killer and a badass. And a lot of people look at her and they think Mystique, blue skin, the hair, and she's a shapeshifter. Blah, blah. Yeah, but she can also mimic powers, which she uses.
So she can do rogue styles.
Yeah, So she's kind of a cross between Rogue in some ways and Mystique in other ways. Very, very cool thing. So I think that character lends itself to a lot of story possibilities. Then we talk about T.J. Miller as Weasel. That is a great character to put in there. Because one of the things I said on Movie Talk when this first broke was that, you know what, this is great because you need a character in there to highlight that Deadpool, besides being the hero of the movie, is also a dick. He's a dick. He really, really is, which is part of his appeal, why we love him so much. But man, because Weasel is that best friend, but he also totally abuses Weasel all the time, brutally. And so I think But Karen being Copycat, Miller being Weasel, it's a perfect fleshing out to set a great stage where hopefully they can tell a great story.
Yeah, Miller's very funny. So he's going to be, him and Reynolds are good. I just can't wait to hear their back and forth. I mean, I think that is going to be a highlight part. And Monica Baccarin, I mean, she, to me, in Homeland is where I saw her shine. I mean, she's so good as one of the lead character's wife. She plays that character so well. I mean, she made me forget about her being in Firefly, and she was incredible in Firefly. So she goes and moves into her roles in such a great way that having her in a superhero film like this elevates it. So,
and you talk about the back and forth that T.J. Miller and Ryan Reynolds are going to have. Once you put her in that equation, she's going to have to be able to play with that, and I think she's one of the ones, I hope so, that can. I mean, again, I'm not that familiar with her background or with her, but it seems like her resume speaks for itself, that she's going to be able to have the chops to go back and forth with those guys.
And I think you bring up something that I have totally forgot about. Is you're right. I think you nailed it. The concept of the chemistry and the banter between TJ and Ryan. Because, you know, you put TJ in a movie like Big Hero 6, where he's got some really fun, light talent, including Wayans and all that kind of stuff, and you hear his voice can do incredible things. You put him in a TV show like Silicon Valley, where he's got this incredible talent around him, and his banter becomes great. You put him in Transformers 4, where he's trying to run his banter against guys who are kind of wood. And as talented as Mark Wahlberg is, he's not the type of guy who can banter with TJ Miller.
No.
But I think you nail. I never even thought about that. Him and Reynolds are going to have awesome banter.
yeah, it's just going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I felt he was so wasted at Transformers 4.
I thought he was the best part of Transformers 4.
He was, and then he gets killed in it, the most horrible death scene where, like, let's slowly rotate around his flaming, burning corpse. I'm like, what's going on?
You take a great
What
comic
weird
like
thing,
him
yeah.
who can do that in film too, then you take somebody like Ryan Reynolds, who was the funniest part of that Wolverine movie, besides the animated claws.
Right.
That we
And he was
got to
the
see.
best part of Blade Trinity, too, as Hannibal King. So, all right, let's move on. This is one of my favorite sections where it's called Spotlight. We put a spotlight on characters that should have their own superhero film. So this is like a kick in the butt to all you producers out there who run those giant mega corporations. Get on it and make these movies. We only have 500 films in development right now. We need a few more. First one that should go into development, The Savage Dragon. Eric Larson's long running comic book started out by those guys from Image, the ones who broke away from from Marvel and were like, we're going to make our own company. And they created all these different characters. Some totally sucked and some were incredible and are still around. And Savage Dragon is one of those comic books and one of those characters that's still around and is still really fun and it's still incredible. And Eric Larson, the creator, writer, and artist of Savage Dragon, is still creating, still writing, and still drawing that comic book. So I just have to tip my hat to that guy, because I think they're on issue 200 and something now, where, I was collecting it for, I think, up until 113, and then I stopped, and now I've got to go back and get all those trades. It just like, I was like, all right, I'm going to stop for a while, and then sometimes you break off one run of comics, and you jump back on another, but this is a consistent run, because it's the same guy writing and drawing it.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's really
He's the
fun.
record holder, isn't he?
He is, he might not be the record holder yet, but he will be breaking, I think it's Cerebus, which is Dave Sims' comic. That's like a record holder right now. And but he is going to be the like Todd McFarlane. His comic is still running, but he didn't write and draw it. He stopped that many years ago. So Eric Larson is the guy who's holding the record for being the writer, creator, and artist on the same comic book. But let's talk about this comic book being adapted into a movie. Let's start with you, Mark.
The question isn't going to play who's going to play Savage. It's going to play who's going to play She-Dragon. Rooney Mara is my early choice.
Okay.
I broke away. You mentioned the breaking away of Marvel and DC that Image did. I was a kid when that was happening, so I was a huge Spawn fan. Death Blow. I think Shadowhawk is a movie that I'd love to see. Get Donald Glover playing Shadowhawk.
Right.
As far as this dude, I'm going to say he's got that menacing look that I think Tom Hardy can pull off, but as far as the overall physique, I think somebody who's got a wider frame, somebody a little bit taller. I'm going to go Michael Fassbender to play this guy.
Nice. I think it's Silverhawk. Pretty sure.
It was Shadowhawk.
It was a Shadowhawk.
Yeah.
Right. I stand corrected.
It started out as Shadowhawk.
Okay.
It might have morphed into something else after I moved on to other
Nerds,
things.
correct us, whatever it is. I can't remember right now, but what do you think?
I'm going to say this right now. I believe out of all the characters we've talked about in all our long history of 3 episodes of Heroes, I think there is no single character that has more cinematic potential than this guy. I think this guy is the one. And here's the thing that makes him really fascinating and instantly shootable, filmable, and marketable. He's a cop.
Yep, Chicago cop.
Chicago cop. And they use that really well.
Yeah.
That opens up a world of possibilities. And you're starting in a world that just assumes metahumans. Metahumans are here, and they're doing lots of stuff. I think he fits in great. You know, it was. Always thought it was kind of weird when they're crossing him over with like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and whatever too. But they actually used it well, right? I think the potential for cinematics, you could do this easy. The fact that a lot of the general public haven't heard of him, that's okay. Why? Because you pitch it as a superhuman cop movie, not necessarily as a comic book movie. He's the guy. I put Dave Bautista in this role, and that's the way I go for it.
That's not a bad one. Dave Bautista. The other great thing about Savage Dragon is its humor. Now, it's a very, very funny book, and it's funny, an adult funny comic book. It's not like a kid funny book, you know, it's not like a bunch of ducks walking around. It's got some savage violent, you know, it's violent.
Some studio head, we need more ducks in this comic.
Man, I don't see enough ducks walking around. Fire that guy. All right, put some ducks in there. But anyway, and then explode them. So I think, this is a comic book that has so much potential. It was an animated series for a little brief moment in time, but this is something that should be not only in development, should be getting cast right now. With Bautista is a great call to play Savage Dragon.
And just so you know, someone's going to be making a T-shirt that says "Put some ducks in there and then explode them." There's going to be T-shirts of that coming. Just so you know,
I might wear that T-shirt. Speaking of T-shirts, we've got Alpha Flight. It's Canada's original X-Men, or you could even call them the first Avengers. But they're from Canada. They were introduced in X-Men 121 and 122. Chris Claremont, John Byrne. That's specific, amazing run. There you have a John Byrne drawing of the Canadians. You see in the middle there, you have a character who was introduced in the X-Men. I believe it was 108, 109. He was trying to get Wolverine back, and he was introduced as Weapon X. Or Weapon Alpha, and Wolverine was Weapon X.
Right.
So this was the start of kind of Logan's origin story, was that right there. And then you sort of, Canada had their own super team, and Logan, you're from that. And once they brought in Alpha Flight and all these other characters, let's get the opinion from the only Canadian in the room, John Campea, Alpha Flight.
Okay, there's two sides to this. Number one, it's a lot of Canadians loved Alpha Flight because they're Canadian. Look, Guardian, Vindicator, great characters, right? So that's great. Shaman was a really solid character. And some places, though, the team played off on like these weird Canadian stereotypes. Puck.
You mean Peter Dinklage?
Yeah,
Everybody thought. We were talking about that earlier. Like X-Men: Days of Future Past. We were like, he's gonna be Puck just because
he's short.
Because he's short. Yeah. Well, who else are they going to get to play Puck?
Yeah.
That's not, I mean, it's not like because he's a tiny guy. It's like, no, it's because he's perfect as Puck. He looks like Puck. So anyway.
Yeah, that would have been really interesting.
Yeah.
And then you name the brother and sister Aurora and North Star, which are Canadian terms. So everything, and then Sasquatch, and so everything seemed to be
Maple
revolved
Leaf,
around.
I think, is on the Guardian.
Oh yeah,
Captain Maple Leaf.
basically
Yeah.
Captain Canada there. But the team was actually a very good team when you actually started reading it. And like Puck, actually, was very similar to Wolverine. A bit of a tortured past and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I mean, could they film this? I don't think they can. I don't think this is a shootable movie. Number one, it'd be compared too much to the X-Men, I think, or Avengers. But on top of it, because it is a distinctly Canadian team, I don't think that's something you sell very well in the States. So while I would be really happy to see it, I don't think you could do it. If I'm a studio head, I couldn't greenlight it, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think it'd be more a situation where you're incorporating some of these characters very gently into what we already know are the films, but it's hard to get an Alpha Flight film for the same reasons you said. But look, I'm an American, so when you see that, it's like, oh yeah, they named him Puck, and the guy's got a maple leaf. But I can only imagine how other people saw Captain America for the first time. Like, really, Captain America?
Right.
Who's next? Dr. Bald Eagle? I mean, come on.
Bald
What are you going to start naming them states? Major Connecticut. Well, I don't know what you're talking about, Captain Baltimore. Just beyond stupid.
I'm Sergeant Illinois.
That's right.
But one socially important thing, both from a sociological point of view and from the world of comics, is that the first openly gay superhero from comic books, at least in the major ones, came from Alpha Flight. It was North Star. They eventually came out that North Star was, again, and I remember they did his wedding. I think they did the wedding with that one. So just one sign of comic books kind of being at the forefront of culture and pushing society a little bit, which I thought was really great.
Yeah, I personally think Alpha Flight would make a great film, and it could be produced here in America. We're right next to Canada. I don't see why there should be some kind of weird border in people's minds. Why not have a great team like Alpha Flight? They have a great synergy. They've had a lot of great stories that were told. I mean, hell, the first story of Alpha Flight was basically led up to issue 12, where they killed the main character. Vindicator died, saving the rest of his team. That hadn't been done really in comic books. They're like some characters had been killed, like the Phoenix and other characters have been killed and stayed dead for quite a while until getting brought back. And obviously in comic books, no one is ever dead. So Vindicator came back like about 8 years later. Another guy was like, I'm going to bring that guy back. But he stayed dead for a long time. And sometimes you have to go with the runs as opposed to not like the runs for problems with the stomach, but comic book runs where you have different writers and artists have their take on the character, and they might do a lot of things. They might change a character's costume. They might get rid of this one character and bring in another character. The same can be said for movies. So you never have to stick with any specific kind of storyline from a run of comic books. You just pick the best ones from the best stories and pluck them and kind of mold a better story. I think there's a movie in there somewhere with Alpha Flight. So.
I think especially for Aurora and for Marina, Trisha Helfer and Katie Sackhoff. Those are my casting choices for that. Nice. Trisha Helfer, I believe, is Canadian, so you can stick with that theme of just going Canadians. We could have Ryan Reynolds, I think, is probably already taken. Hayden Christensen is Canadian. Maybe we can give him a little redemption movie. So you don't want to try him one more time?
No redemption for Hayden
as Guardian. We could get Puck from the real world to play Puck here, and then we could get Nickelback, who's Canadian, to do the soundtrack.
All right, we're moving on because Nickelback got mentioned.
Or
and
Bryan
Celine
Adams.
Dion. Celine Dion and Bryan Adams do the soundtrack.
Third character picked for a spotlight is Red Sonja. It's Robert E. Howard's She-Devil with a Sword. You've seen her in her famous chainmail in all these different comic book versions. She was first introduced in illustrated by Barry Windsor Smith back in the 70s, not wearing that now famous chainmail like in the comic book Conan. So let's talk about Red Sonja and why she doesn't have a movie yet. She had one movie that was made. It was after Arnold's movie run as Conan. Arnold was in the Red Sonja, played by Bridget Nielsen.
Yeah,
So
they
that
try
was-
to trick people into thinking it was another Conan movie. Look, it's Arnold in a barbarian outfit.
Only his name is Shambhalar or something like that. He was like, I am still here. You know, it's like.
That was my question to you because I'm not as familiar with the Red Sonja character, but I knew there was some sort of movie. And I was like, I think it was Brigitte Nielsen was in that.
Yeah.
So bring her back as Mama Red Sonja. Okay, so now we can have daughter Red Sonja. I would want to say somebody like Jessica Chastain, but I'm going to throw one. I'm taking a risk here. Karen Gillan, okay? She was in Guardians of the Galaxy. I didn't like her in Guardians of the Galaxy. I thought she just missed the tone from what everybody else was doing. However, I think there's a lot of talent there. I'll give her Red Sonja.
I like that.
Man, Bridget Nielsen, a.k.a. Mrs. Sylvester Stallone. Yeah, I mean, it wasn't the thing about that where she could only, if any man can best her at the sword, she will give herself to.
Yeah.
It's
Well, that was the movie version. Yeah.
Right, and so it's like Arnold's like, all right, draws his sword, here we go. I mean, and then look, a couple of years ago at Comic-Con, they were saying, we are doing one. Robert
Rodriguez was going to do it.
with his girlfriend at the time.
Yeah. From Charmed.
Yeah, what's redhead? Why am I forgetting her name?
I don't know. You just mind blanked me because I was like,
And she was just in the new Conan.
no, she's.
She was just in the new Conan. She was the witch.
She was in the
new
yeah, she
Conan.
was
I know
in Conan.
exactly. She's also in G.I. Joe. I think she played us.
No. She was in.
She was in Robert Rodriguez's.
She was the one with the gun on her leg.
Gun leg.
For
Please, someone, what is her
yeah.
name? You guys?
Can we get a fact checker?
Fact check.
Because it's going to kill me if I don't know her name. But at any rate, they tried to get that going, and I always thought that
That's why she's not in the
the
movie, 'cause
unknown
none of us can
redhead.
remember.
I always thought she was a weird choice, and honestly, at the time, and you hate feeling this way, but it was like Rodriguez is only pushing this because he's dating her. I mean, because I never thought she was a good fit for. Thank you so much, Rose McGowan. Dennis
Thank God
saves the
I
day.
remembered that. Rose McGowan.
The one
Thank
that
you, Dennis.
She used to date Marilyn Manson.
Yes, she did.
That one?
Yeah, Rose McGowan.
No, actually,
She did.
I thought that was the redhead
No,
from
you're thinking of somebody different.
Yeah. Yeah, she dated.
Wedding Crashers. The redhead from Wedding Crashers. I know.
Fact
she was
checker, you're
dating-
fired.
Yeah. No, it's Rose McGowan because
Oh, it is Rose McGowan.
when she was in Jawbreakers, the movie Jawbreakers. That's when she was dating.
But
Marilyn
did not the
Manson back then.
redhead from Wedding Crashers, the one who played the main girl's
Oh,
sister?
you're thinking of Isla Fisher.
Yes, she did date. She did date him, did she not?
I don't know if she did.
Marilyn Manson?
I'm just happy I got her name right.
No, she dated Borat. I take that back.
She's
I was
married
wrong.
to Borat.
Did she marry Borat? I take that back. I was totally
We should
wrong
have
about
stopped
that.
at Alpha Flight and just kept this thing
We
going.
can cut all this part out, can we? Or just keep it. And so Rose McGowan was going to play Red Sonja.
Yeah, and I didn't think it was a good fit. I never thought that was a good fit. And honestly, I don't know that. I honestly don't think a Red Sonja movie works right now. I think they just tried to do Conan again. It didn't work. Now, it was also not very good. So, I mean, there's not even what if you made a really good. I just don't know that today is the day to do it. I don't know if we're in the right time to do it. Maybe someday, but I just don't see it working right now.
See, I think it could be an amazing film. You could take a little sprinkling of Game of Thrones and throw that in there, and maybe like in this movie version, she's not wearing the chainmail, like she's not overly sexualized. She's just a warrior, a female warrior, and you just tell a really cool story. I mean, there's no reason that you can't do that. So I think Red Sonja can be redone and get rid of some of the old barnacles that are on. You know, like when you think about Red Sonja, you think about that old film where it's like, you know, it's a little corny. We can revamp her and refresh her. I think that's what you can do. All right, so here we're moving on to our Twitter questions. We're gonna just rock right into this. Question number 1 by Mike N. All right, AMC Heroes. Let's legitimize the Punisher in film. Tom Hardy as Castle. You got Gareth Evans of the Raid fame to direct it. It's time for the skull. What do you guys think? Punisher. Let's the revamp happen. What's going to happen?
I think Gareth Evans would be a great choice to direct the Punisher. Tom Hardy, I don't like Tom Hardy as Frank Castle. I'd bring back Ray Stevenson as Frank Castle before I cast anybody new as him. I didn't hate Thomas Jane in there. You know, I think Ray Stevenson was in Punisher Warzone, which was the most recent Punisher full-length movie. And the movie, I enjoyed watching the movie for what it was. I didn't love, I think, Schnepp, you had a problem with Jigsaw, too.
I thought Jigsaw was a little bit too much Batman and Robin, that kind of weird red, green lighting. And, you know,
but the actual,
too cartoony.
Watching Ray Stevenson as the Punisher, I felt like the Punisher was my favorite comic book growing up as a kid. I felt like I was finally watching the guy leap off the page into a movie theater.
Yes, I totally agree. I think Stevenson nailed that character role. He was amazing in Rome, the HBO series, and then him as the Punisher, the director Lexi Alexander, she did a great job at portraying the brutality of the Punisher, but not making it corny or goofy. It was just like, no, that's what this guy does. That's a criminal. He punishes them by blowing their head off, and that's just how it works.
I mean, I don't. The question is asking. Maybe it's time to legitimize. He's been legitimized. Punisher Warzone was legit, and you're right. Ray Stevens, I thought, was a great Punisher, and Lexi Alexander did a fantastic job. Now, it didn't succeed box office wise, but whatever. But look, that movie worked. It is legitimate, and so I choose not to answer the question about anybody else because it is a legitimate series. They made it legitimate.
All right, question number 2. All right, thought you guys wanted to discuss this on AMC Heroes. We are talking about, you got to talk about Crash Ryan. So it's this epic Marvel epic series from the 80s, which is like it was like a combination, like steampunky Star Wars, kind of Raiders of the Lost Ark thing. We only ran for 4 issues, but it just got picked up to be turned into a new series, and that's how they're going to try to present it in film, is like, let's make this kind of Star Warsy Raiders film. What do you guys think about that?
It's hard for me to get enthusiastic about when I'm so unfamiliar with it. I mean, I've seen a lot of things say, hey, this has been optioned. You know, 1,000 things get optioned every single day. So until something a little more concrete, I just don't get all that worked up about it.
And if it got optioned for a TV show, then Crash Ryan, maybe it could be the Guardians of the Galaxy on your TV instead of, you know, because that had a Raiders of the Lost Ark Star Wars feel. Now, it's a lot easier to say that in a meeting than to actually be able to pull it off. But, you know, the name Crash Ryan?
I keep thinking Bandicoot. Crash Bandicoot.
Right. I mean, to me, Crash Ryan definitely does have that call back to the 30s, like a serialized something.
Yeah, no, it really does.
It's a good name. So it really depends on what they do with the material that they have. So let's go on to question number 3. It's from Wardale White. Would you be interested in a movie based on this version of Starman? So this version of Starman that he's talking about is the 3rd version of Starman.
Right.
It's this guy in kind of a yellow-purple outfit is flying around. It's not the Starman that was written by James Robinson that, you know, basically brought Starman back into popularity.
I only want the first Starman because his name was Theodore Knight. Ted Knight. If we get Ted Knight from Caddyshack to play Starman, that's the only version of Starman I want. I think,
don't bring up Caddyshack.
Starman's a neat looking character that fine. I wouldn't be overly enthused about it, but I think that it's one of the more legit properties that you could pick up to make a film about.
Yeah, I would stick with the newer version or the revamped version that was written by James Robinson. The newer version of Starman. I wouldn't go with the middle, the 2nd or 3rd, or even the 1st. I would go with this 4th version of Starman. So the guy with the jacket, if you need to visually represent yourself. Let's move on. Question number 4 from Mark Perone. If Doctor Strange is successful, do you see DC Comics making or casting Dr. Fate as in the TV or the movies?
I honestly don't think they care one way or the other. They're going to do Dr. Fate if they want to do Dr. Fate. They're not going to do him no matter how sick. If they don't want to do Dr. Fate, it doesn't matter how popular or how big, Strange is. And look, they're actually not all that similar. I mean, I get it on the surface. There's some similarities when you think about them, but there really are very, very different characters. And it just looks to me like the way DC is going, they're not really paying much attention to what Marvel's doing, and vice versa. And that's the way it should be. So I don't think it's going to influence it positively or negatively.
I would disagree. I think that if anything, Doctor Strange would sway them to not want to do Dr. Fate, because on the surface is what unfortunately a lot of people care about. They see Doctor Strange, Dr. Fate. They're both sorcerers. They have these mystical powers. So I think that it would hurt the chances. Doctor Strange hurts the chances of Dr. Fate happening. Having said that, it'd be a neat property to see them explore on the big screen. I think you can tie that in with the current universe that they're building.
I would love to see this because Dr. Fate was one of my favorite characters as a kid. Those are the only episodes of Smallville that I watched.
I was going to say, remember they brought him in Smallville?
They put him in Smallville. I was like, damn it, I have to watch Smallville. So I watched those. What I would do as a movie version for Dr. Fate is get rid of the Doctor. Just call it Fate.
Good call.
Bam.
But you can see that character in the universe.
I totally see it in the universe, the cinematic universe that they're building right now. Obviously, it's hard to imagine it completely because I haven't seen Batman v Superman, so I don't know exactly how they're going to introduce the magical elements. We obviously know that, hey, here's Earth and here's another planet with aliens. Superman's on our planet now. He's an alien. So they're cool with the idea of aliens and technology and stuff like that. I don't know how they're going to rock with like the more mystical or magical elements, but if you were going to add it, that would be a way to add it and not have this kind of similarity, Doctor Strange, Doctor Fate, Doctor this and that. Just call him Fate. And then you've just opened up a whole other world, just gotten rid of this kind of weird stigma.
But make sure in his office you can still see a degree.
Yeah.
Right back there. So
and he should have on his name tag, Doctor. You're like, why do you have that?
He's got his
Vanished.
stethoscope.
Yeah, totally.
I didn't go to 5 years of magic medical school just to be called Fate.
Yeah, totally changed the outfit. I'm just in a doctor's outfit. What happened to the cool golden crumbly? All right, question number 5. Witchbrow asks, what's the latest on the Spawn reboot? Is the movie still on? Is Jamie Foxx still attached to play Simmons? What do you think?
I'd love to see anything with Spawn, and I want to see more. That first movie was such a train wreck to what that comic book was. I need to see something else that Spawn. I'm not sure what the latest.
You didn't like John Leguizamo?
I didn't. I really didn't at all.
Right.
Look, the creator of Spawn,
Todd McFarlane.
Todd McFarlane's been talking for 12 years about doing another one. Then he comes out it feels like it's been like Dan Aykroyd over the past 20 years with Ghostbuster movies. Like every 6 months he comes out talking about, yep, I've got a new Spawn coming.
It's actually longer. It's 16 years.
Yeah, it's been forever. So, and this whole thing is Jamie Foxx still attached? Jamie Foxx officially never was attached. There was talk about Jamie Foxx wanting to do it and some talk about stuff like that, but that was never, materialized really. So as far as I know, there's still no Spawn on the books, and as far as I know, Jamie Foxx is still not attached.
Yeah, I mean, I think Spawn is a character that could be turned into a cool movie. And I know McFarlane has been talking for many years about like, hey, we're going to redo Spawn and make it like darker and more spooky and make it like a horror movie. I think he should just give it to Blumhouse and be like, look, here's $5 million. Make a Spawn movie, and I think they
probably
make
need a little
20,
more than 5.
I'm just saying, like whatever Ouija cost or whatever these other these scrimpy. I shot the whole thing in a weekend in a hospital with like 17 unknown actors. I mean, whatever that cost.
With Spawn, I want to actually see what hell looks like. Like I don't want to just see a Ouija board in a creaky house.
I'm saying that's why I'm saying $5 million, because all those other movies cost about $600,000. They don't cost anything.
You make movies, so you know what they cost. I don't. I have $180 under my dresser. That's a
Mark Ellis wants to see hell in the Spawn universe. Someone should make it. Blumhouse, get on the phone with McFarlane, make a deal today. So let's move on. Question 6. We got: are there stories finished in the MCU? Like are there stories finished? The way that what they're trying to ask is all these characters who are sort of brought up in the cinematic universe, the Leader, the Abomination, Red Skull, Justin Hammer, the Mandarin, are they done, or are they going to be woven back in as villains, or are they still part of the cinematic universe of Marvel? What do you guys think as far as those characters?
Well, I think Justin Hammer's done. I don't think they're going to go back to that. There are a couple, though, on that list that are very interesting. Number 1, Abomination. Abomination is a card that Marvel Marvel decided so intelligently to keep in their pocket. Remember, they did not kill Abomination.
Nope.
He is still alive, and it is in this cinematic universe. He is a great card to play whether it's with a standalone Hulk film in the future or as something. We need to throw something that's a big problem for the Avengers. Abomination can be that big problem, even though they have the Hulk with them. That's a great card that they can play. With the Red Skull, remember, they did that really quick little tricky thing where he was just sucked into that space vortex, the same kind of looking thing that Loki fell into at the end of Thor. Right. And guess what? He was still alive.
And now, Skull was holding the cosmic cube.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, look, we know the actor doesn't want to come back to do it, but that doesn't mean you can't use him again if you don't want to. So I think those ones are still very much possibilities. I don't think they're going to go back to the leader. They started to introduce the leader at the end of that Hulk film.
Right.
I don't think they're going to go anywhere with that. But Abomination and Red Skull, I would not put money on them never using them again. I think there are cards they still got in their pockets.
Yeah, you're right. In the way that they played it in those two films, it left it open. It wasn't a certainty. It wasn't like the end of Freddy versus Jason when you see Freddy's head wink at somebody like, oh, he's still alive. We don't know where Red Skull is. We don't know what happened to Abomination. So if they want to bring it back, they can, or they never have to touch it again. I think the most potential is with Red Skull because, like you said, he was holding on to that cube. He disappeared. Where did he go? When you're watching that film for the first time, you're not really thinking about it. You're just glad that this dude's out of the plane. And oh my God, is Cap gonna die? What's gonna happen with Cap? And then no, okay, cool. Now we know what happened to him. And then all of a sudden we get this really neat Easter egg about these other movies. So you're walking out of the theater. You almost forgot Red Skull was in the film. He was great in the movie, but you almost forgot he was in the film. So it's not on the forefront of the audience's mind.
Right.
It's also not on the forefront of any of the Avengers' minds. So if he wants to come back and rope-a-dope, it might be a pretty good time to do it.
I'm expecting him to pop in and he could be one of the major problems for the Infinity War simply because he has that cosmic cube. Thanos.
He doesn't have it.
What?
He doesn't have it.
He had it when that's what.
Remember, they found it on the bottom of the ocean.
Oh, so he just got sucked away?
Yeah.
Wow. All right, that throws my theory away.
All right, it wasn't
no,
a
your
cosmic
theory's
cube.
still good, though. I mean, just take out the cube. Your theory's still good.
Take out the cube. He's like floating dead in space. Something, I don't know what happened.
The biggest problem is getting Hugo Weaving to come back.
I don't think he's coming back.
He doesn't want to come back, but he's acknowledged that Marvel's got the contract. I mean, they can make him come back if they want to, but I don't think they want to do that to him. Replace him. Just put on the prosthetics, replace him. It's too bad because Hugo was great as Skull.
Get Jim Carrey from The Mask to play Red Skull. It's the same looking dude.
It'd be a funny Skull. The Mandarin, I don't know if they're going to bring the actor version of him back or they're going to reveal that yet another Mandarin.
Well, do you remember? Do you see the short film?
No.
Okay, so there's a short film. I'm trying to remember the name of the one. It's done by Marvel. It's a short film that's about this documentary or this news team that goes into the prison to talk to Ben Kingsley.
No, I want to see it. I just haven't seen it.
Right. So for those of you who don't know, he talked to Ben Kingsley about the fact that he was posing as the man and stuff like that. But as it turns out, this reporter that came into prison to interview him actually works for the real Mandarin, who's not happy with Ben Kingsley for masquerading as him. And then they end it there where they break him out of jail to take him back to the real Mandarin.
Whoa.
And that's where they end it. And that gets everybody like me really excited. Wow. I want to see the real Mandarin. I really
It's
do.
another thing that they did very smartly. You never have to touch that again if you don't want to. There's a lot of other villains we can play with. We want to see what Thanos is up to. We want to see all these other guys, but we don't know. It could be the Mandarin.
Well, but is it the Mandarin or is it the Guy Pearce Mandarin?
No,
it's I'm the Mandarin.
The guy talks about how, talks about the honor of the Mandarin. No, it's the Mandarin. It's the Mandarin who they talked about. Now, whether what happens in the short films is canon or not, don't know. But it was produced by Marvel. Marvel's the one that made it, so they opened the door.
I think it's got to be canon because that's how they introduced Agent Carter, was in a short film.
Yeah.
So, hopefully they'll answer that question. So we've got another question. Question 7. Whatever happened to Hellboy? So we got Hellboy 1. We got Hellboy 2. I think it was called The Golden Army. And now Ron Perlman it's like almost 10 years old. Like 10 years ago was Hellboy 2. Ron Perlman's getting older. He's a great actor. He's in all these Sons of Anarchy. He's always in movies, Godzilla, you name it. Can he play Hellboy 3? It's like Guillermo is like booked for like 10 more years. He's doing Pacific Rim 2. He's got Crimson Peak coming out. He's got some other spooky film that he's making after that. When is Hellboy 3 going to happen? What do you guys think?
It's odd with all the makeup that Ron Perlman has in that film. It's still, I think that Ron Perlman playing that guy is more important than even Del Toro coming back to direct. Del Toro could produce it or he could exec produce it. You can hand off a franchise to somebody else who shares your vision or who has a cool idea for where to take it. Because, like we're talking about with Joss Whedon or anybody else, sometimes you just get burned out on a project. You still love it, but you just have these other things you want to do. So hand it off to somebody else. Because I think Ron Perlman, while you need that overall all the way his face looks because it's such a distinctive face.
Right.
He can age, and you can still put those prosthetics all over him. Those movies are so much fun. They're so full of imagination that I think that if Del Toro had some sort of fingerprints on it, not necessarily directing, I'd be up for another one.
That's the thing, though. It would have to be somebody else because a Del Toro directed Hellboy 3 is never going to happen. Del Toro has said himself, in all my films, I need the stakes to get bigger. I need global catastrophe for a Hellboy 3. I need, and this is what Del Toro said, I need a $200 million budget to do Hellboy 3. And there's nobody who's going to give him $200 million to do a Hellboy 3. That's never going to happen. So if what you're talking about, where, okay, if Del Toro can let go and step back from it, no one's going to do it unless he gives his blessing. But if Del Toro lets go of it, let somebody else come in, maybe make one for $45 million.
Blumhouse will give him $5 million.
But Blumhouse will give him $5 million.
know that.
And you're
Couple
right.
co-productions.
He's got to come back to play Hellboy. I think you're absolutely right. It's more important for him to come back than for Del Toro to come back. If that happens, it can happen. But as long as Del Toro's holding on to it and says, I need $200 million to make Hellboy 3, it's never going to happen.
I agree with both of you. I would love for Del Toro to just let it go, let someone else write it, let someone else direct it, get Perlman in there, make it for $60 million. They're going to make their money back. That closes the trilogy book. They've got to have Hellboy go through what he has to go through like he did in the comics. So it's sort of like one of those things I'd love to see happen. I agree with you though. The $200 million is not going to happen. So it's got to move. Del Toro has to let it go. Because he's booked for like 20 years. He's like,
he's got a lot going on.
He's making Pacific Rim 2. You know that's going to be 4 or 5 years. So, Ron Perlman's going to be 65. Like, I want to be Hellboy. So let's do it now. Question number 8 we've got, with the hopeful success of Fantastic Four, this is from Richard Hammond. Thank you, Richard. With the hopeful success of Fantastic Four, are the chances good for a Silver Surfer reboot?
I don't know. Number one, I think Silver Surfer still is with Fox. I think the rights are still with Fox. I'll be honest, I don't know that a standalone Silver Surfer movie works. I think a Silver Surfer movie works. I mean, could it be great that hardcore comic book nerds would like it? Yes. Could it be a huge commercial success? I'm not totally convinced that it could be. It's a strange one. I think he works better as a character mixed in with other characters. As a standalone, I'm not sure. So it really all depends. Would Fox look? But that being said, if Fantastic Four, this new one, is a big giant hit, then Fox may start thinking the way Sony's thinking, let's get a cinematic universe around Fantastic Four developed. Then they start bringing those characters. That's the best chance, I think, that they have for that.
I think it definitely would happen if that's the case. If this Fantastic Four is successful, which I still think is out there one way or the other, I'm not sure it's a slam dunk. Even though I like the trailer, I'm not sure that everybody's going to want to go see Fantastic Four opening weekend like they are the Avengers or anything else. I think Silver Surfer definitely is going to fit into there again because like what Sony and Marvel were able to do, if they were able to get Spider-Man back in the MCU, you can do anything. And I think that you're going to see, down the road, I think you could see Silver Surfer. I think you will see Silver Surfer in a Fantastic Four movie before you have this X-Men Fantastic Four crossover that everybody's kind of been thinking about. I think Silver Surfer comes in first.
Yeah, I agree. I think Silver Surfer works the best when he's playing off characters. I mean, I think in his solo comics, and also he has to be Earthbound. I think personally, the way you introduce him is introduce him with Galactus, and then he's banished and stuck on Earth. Then you make a Silver Surfer movie about him being banished and stuck on Earth. Because once he's free flying around doing all the stuff through the cosmos, that's a whole other type of Silver Surfer, and they've done that many, many times. It gets really cosmic. I don't know if they have the backup to be able to do that because they're not locked in with the Marvel Cinematic Universe that has all the other parts that are the components of the space-bound Silver Surfer. The only thing that they have is Silver Surfer and Galactus. They'd have to come up with all these other things that, unfortunately, Fox doesn't have. They don't have Skrulls. They don't have the Kree. They don't have, they don't have the rest of the cosmic Marvel universe. So that's why to me it's like you introduce Silver Surfer maybe in Fantastic Four 2 or 3 with Galactus as the threat for the third one. And then if everything works out right, then you can possibly do a spin-off and you can create some kind of fabric of a cinematic universe with the X-Men and some of their space aliens, because that's the way you have to think about it. That you can't just pluck stuff from Marvel's toy chest because they've got all that stuff. You've got this really small toy chest. It's got a lot of characters from the Fantastic Four in it, including Silver Surfer, but it doesn't have Silver Surfer's other space-bound universes, which are all owned by Avengers and all these, Thanos and all these other the space opera that is Marvel right now.
Until that gets settled, I don't even think you see a tease. I think they might have liked to tease that in this Fantastic Four film that we're going to see in August, but I don't even think you're going to get a tease until the rights from the studio is all settled.
The other problem you have with Silver Surfer, though, too, and this might be a problem, is the same problem you potentially run into with Superman, is that with the power cosmic, he's just too powerful. Like the Silver Surfer is just too powerful, and so an Earthbound Silver Surfer, unless you do something like plot-wise to depower him, like what's he doing on Earth? What bad guy on Earth poses a real problem to the Silver Surfer? So that's another problem they'd have to deal with and figure out.
Yeah, it's a lot to figure out. Our last question, it's the bonus sweaty question of the week. It comes from Craig Barron, and his question is, what's the most underrated early comic book film? Is it The Rocketeer or The Shadow or The Phantom? So I'm guessing, Craig, you might be like 20 or something, because this is like the 90s underrated version. So let's just say the most underrated 90s film. Is it The Rocketeer, The Shadow, or The Phantom?
My answer is not The Phantom.
My answer is not.
I can't stand that movie. I thought it was horrible. I thought it was so ridiculously
Billy
terrible.
Zane.
I would go with. I like The Shadow. I might have just liked The Shadow because when I saw The Shadow in the theater, they ran a trailer for Time Cop before it. And the trailer for Time Cop's awesome. So I'd probably have to go with The Rocketeer. I think that they took a lot of chances. There were a lot of shots in there that I don't think that the visual effects held up with what the vision was trying to be. But as far as walking into a Disney movie and seeing something like The Rocketeer on the big screen, it was a bold vision. They made a hell of an effort, I'll say, with The Rocketeer. And so that's probably the one that I would take.
Oh, The Shadow. The Shadow. The Shadow knows. I loved The Shadow for all of its weirdness, and it has problems, certainly, and all that kind of stuff. Alec Baldwin as the Shadow, I thought was great. I love that his nemesis in it was Genghis Khan. There was just so much cool stuff. That weird little knife that would fly around and bite you and stuff like that. I love that movie for all of its quirkiness, and I do think it's underappreciated, so I'm going to go with The Shadow. It's
a good call. I mean, I'm torn between The Rocketeer and The Shadow, so I don't have to choose one. I'll choose both. It's both of them are underappreciated. The Phantom is a whole other level of stinky that we won't go into. The Rocketeer, I agree with you. It stayed true to the Dave Stevens comic book. The design, everything about it, they really emulated that comic book, and it was a fun film. It didn't hit it on all cylinders. Unfortunately, it just was very uneven. But I thought it was great. And also, Joe Johnson was able to redeem himself because he went on to do Captain America.
That's right.
A lot of people forget. He also directed The Rocketeer. The Shadow was directed by, I think his name is Russell Mulcahy. He came from like directing Duran Duran videos, and then he moved on to doing the very first Highlander. And he also directed Highlander, the Quickening, or whatever it was called. I think it was
Highlander 2 was the Quickening.
We don't talk about it. We don't talk about
the planet Crimblor, or whatever it's from. But anyway, Russell Mulcahy would love to blow stuff up. Like, that was his thing in music videos. Then he kept doing it in all the movies. He would always have some scene where some dude is like, I can't believe it. And then windows explode and stuff. But with the Phantom, not with the Phantom, the Shadow, I really think it is an underappreciated film because of the dark layer there.
Yeah.
It had a lot of creepy elements that were just not introduced in superhero films ever. Like, oh, he's a heroin addict. He's on poppy smoking, he's smoking all kinds of opium. He also had this really dark layer to him. The Shadow is a creepy, freaky villain. He turns away, then just throws a dude off a building. It was like the sequences that were in The Shadow that were actually superhero-y. There's very few of them, but when they do them, they were really fun. Because it was one of those films where it was like, Alec Baldwin always had to take the mask off, and he would never look like the Shadow. He only looked like the Shadow like 3 times. And I remember when I saw it, that's what bummed me out. I was like, he's the Shadow, but it's one of those things where it's like the star has to, my face has to be in it by 60%. That's in my contract, or whatever, whoever knows why. Or maybe they're like, well, people will forget that he's the Shadow, or that he's Alec Baldwin if you see him with that giant nose and the red thing. No, that's what the Shadow looks like. So anyway, that's my bummer part of The Shadow, but everything else about it was really fun. And it did have this really weird, quirky, magical edge to it. So it's a lot of fun.
For $5 right now, can either one of you tell me what the tagline was on the poster for The Phantom?
Who knows what lurks in the hearts of men?
That was The Shadow. That was The Shadow.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were asking about
The Phantom.
The Phantom.
Crime hurts or something. It was
Slam evil.
Slam evil. Right.
Just don't slam down $10 for this piece of crap movie.
Oucho. And with that, we are going to wrap up our third episode of Heroes. Thanks for sticking around and sweating it out with us. Hey, where can we find you, Mark Ellis, on the interwebs?
You can find me at the next live Nickelback show. I also will be 5150 Ellis on Twitter and Instagram, and I have a comedy album on iTunes called Get to the Castle. Just search Mark Ellis or Get to the Castle. Enjoy.
John Campea.
You can find me on Facebook and on YouTube, just at John Campea. And, of course, watch AMC Movie Talk every day. AMC Jedi Councils on Thursday and right here on AMC Heroes.
Right on. I'm John Schnepp, and you can find me at on Twitter and Instagram, just at John Schnepp or at TDOSLWH. I've got my feature film documentary coming out May 1st. Globally, you'll be able to find it on the interwebs. It's called The Death of Superman Lives, What Happened? So check that out. And tune in next week for the 4th episode of AMC Heroes, and hashtag us any questions or comments that you have at hashtag AMC Heroes. I'll see you next week.